U.S. will add an additional 25% tariff to 50% on steel and aluminum coming into the U.S. from Canada.
The American tariffs, the new tariffs on steel and aluminum, are unlawful, unjustified, and illogical.
We will not back down.
The U.S. relies on Canada for 75% of its imported.
Increase the cost of buying aluminum on in the American market.
We have retaliatory tariffs on over $90 billion worth.
On the U.S. side, it will increase the cost to consumers to buy products that are made out of aluminum.
We must reinforce our strength at home and safeguard Canadian workers and businesses.
Suppose I told you that the biggest industrial shock to hit the United States in 2025 didn't come from China, but from its next-door neighbor. This story began quietly, not with a loud, all-out trade war, but with what seemed like a small, almost technical move, raising import tariffs on aluminum. It looked procedural, harmless. No one imagined it would ignite a chain reaction capable of shaking multiple American industries and forcing a re-examination of a trade relationship long thought untouchable. The White House raised tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to between 25% and 50%. Within months, the impact spread like wildfire. Production lines halted. Factory gates were locked. Entire towns that had relied on manufacturing for generations were left stunned. Energy demand in the American Midwest plummeted, handing Canada an advantage it hadn't enjoyed in decades. While Washington descended into partisan squabbles, Ottawa moved with precision, expanding seaports, signing defense contracts with NATO and Indo-Pacific partners, and securing long-term green energy deals with Europe and Asia. Canadian aluminum, already selling at record prices, was suddenly everywhere, from Tesla's electric vehicles to the fuselage frames of fighter jets. In contrast, U.S. manufacturers scrambled to source materials, often at higher prices from more distant suppliers. What began as an attempt to shield American industry had instead opened the door for Canada to claim a dominant position in key global markets. The U.S. didn't just lose a trade dispute, it risked losing an entire industrial edge. And if this shift continues, historians may look back on 2025 not as the year America protected its economy, but as the year it unknowingly handed Canada the keys to a new economic era. This was no longer a simple trade dispute. It had transformed into an all-out economic power race. The only question now, does the United States have the strength to keep pace? Just hours before the new tariff policy took effect, Washington shocked even its closest allies. In a sudden move, the White House doubled import duties on Canadian steel and aluminum from 25% to 50% under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. Officials called it a bold step to protect America's critical industries. But the numbers tell a different story. In 2023, nearly half of all aluminum imported into the U.S. came from Canada, which produces 80% of all primary aluminum in North America. Cutting that supply wasn't just a policy change. It was a direct hit to the core of America's industrial base. The market's reaction was immediate and brutal. Within 24 hours, aluminum prices in the Midwest soared to 58 cents per pound, or $1,325 per ton, a record high. Giants like GM, Ford, and Boeing suddenly faced a choice: swallow the cost or halt production lines. Mark Richardson, an aerospace supplier in Ohio, told CNBC he had never seen raw material prices swing so violently, and worse, the federal government still had no plan. Experts warn the fallout won't stop at factory floors. Rising costs could trigger a domino effect, from layoffs in manufacturing towns to surging prices on cars, appliances, and even fighter jets. Energy demand is already sliding in industrial states, a worrying sign for local economies. This isn't just about metal. It's about momentum, and right now, the U.S. may have handed Canada a historic advantage in a race it can't afford to lose. Rising production costs are slowing America's industrial engine. As output declines, electricity demand falls, slashing revenues for utility companies already struggling to maintain aging infrastructure. This chain reaction, sparked in Washington, reached a breaking point at Alcoa's massive plant in Davenport, Iowa. Mike Jensen, a shift supervisor, told KQWC that production had fallen to the point of being almost unmanageable. Once running 3 full shifts nonstop, the plant now sends workers home early twice a week. "You can see the pressure on everyone's faces," he said. "Mortgage bills still arrive on time, whether aluminum prices recover or not." North of the border, Ottawa's response was swift and strategic. The Canadian government injected $1.5 billion Canadian dollars into upgrading the Alouette aluminum smelter, one of the largest on the continent. Simultaneously, it locked in a long-term, low-cost clean electricity contract with Hydro-Quebec, guaranteeing stable energy for years to come. For line engineer Sophie Gagnon, the move was more than just numbers. "I've worked here 14 years and have never seen such a major investment," she said. "Most importantly, we know we'll still be here 5 years from now." Trade analyst Sarah Thompson from Brookings noted, "They're not reacting emotionally. They see this as an opportunity to rebuild supply chains for the long term." The results came fast. Within weeks, Canada signed duty-free aluminum export contracts with the EU and Japan. Shipments to the UK, Singapore, and Italy surged. In Asia, some metalworks even canceled U.S. bauxite orders, choosing Quebec instead at lower prices, with cleaner energy and under more stable political conditions. While U.S. plants slow and communities brace for layoffs, Canada is quietly positioning itself as the new powerhouse in the global aluminum market. Luc Boucher, owner of a small extrusion shop in Trois-Rivières, still shakes his head in disbelief. "Last month, we shipped our first order to Osaka. 10 years ago, that would have been just a dream." But Ottawa wasn't satisfied with short-term wins. Behind the scenes, it was crafting a bold plan to redraw North America's logistics map, one that would free Canada's aluminum industry from U.S. infrastructure entirely. The announcement came at the end of Q1 2025, and it was a bombshell. Clean, hydropower aluminum was officially declared a national strategic asset, ranked alongside oil and rare earth minerals. The new status triggered tighter export controls, targeted subsidies, and long-term infrastructure investments, cementing aluminum's role as a pillar of Canada's green economy for the next decade. The centerpiece? The Port of Saguenay in Quebec. For decades, over 70% of Canada's aluminum exports passed through U.S. ports or rail lines, leaving them vulnerable to tariffs and policy shifts. Ottawa declared that era over, approving a $2 Canadian $3 billion expansion to handle 69,000-ton vessels and boost capacity by 15 million tons annually. A 375-kilometer railway from the Alouette plant to Saguenay would be upgraded with federal and provincial funding, cutting transit times by 28% and slashing costs by $12 per ton. Port CEO Pierre Gagnon was blunt. "We're building trade sovereignty out of steel, concrete, and political will. Goods will leave on our schedule, no one else's." Mayor Julie Dufour called it a turning point for an entire generation. "This isn't just about metal leaving the docks," she said. "It's about new jobs, new shops, and a new future for Quebec's economy." Canada wasn't just playing defense anymore. It was building an empire.